There are currently two methods employed by automakers to create a new electric vehicle in 2023. Method one is to create a new vehicle from the ground up and add that vehicle to the brand's lineup of models. This is exemplified by Mercedes with the EQS. Although the EQS is advertised as an electric S-Class, it is an all-new architecture, an all-new platform, and an all-new model. Method two is to create one vehicle that can be sold as both gas and electric cars. An example of this is the BMW 7 Series, which is sold with both 6- and 8-cylinder gas engines and an all-electric version called the i7. But these vehicles ride on the same platform and look identical. Genesis utilized both methods in the compact crossover space with two vehicles, the GV60 and the GV70. Today we take a look at the Electrified GV70 to see how well they employed method 2. As was alluded to in the introduction, the GV70 is sold as both gas and electric versions, while the gas versions have 4 or 6 cylinders under the hood. The Electrified GV70 has a lot of black plastic and a very small frunk. Although 60 is smaller than 70, the GV60 and the GV70 are not that different in size. The GV70 only has 2.2 more total cubic feet of storage capacity than the GV60. And this is one of the benefits of method 1, building an electric vehicle from the ground up. Because EVs are comparatively more simple than gas vehicles, they don't have engines, transmissions, and exhaust systems, designers can push the wheelbase of the vehicle to the edges of the car. This allows the GV60, which has a comparatively smaller footprint to the GV70, to have a very similar interior volume because there's more space for the passenger compartment. Another benefit of method 1 is that automakers are able to design the driving dynamics from the ground up. The Genesis GV70 was originally designed as a gas car. It's sold with 6- and 4-cylinder engines. So moving the powertrain of the Genesis GV60 Performance over into the GV70 has meant that there are different driving characteristics between the two cars. The Genesis GV60 Performance is a surprisingly sporty car. It corners and accelerates and handles kind of like a sports car, even though it is a compact crossover. The Electrified GV70 definitely has less of that. Even though they have similar horsepower figures, when I press boost mode and floor it, well, it definitely does accelerate promptly. The GV60 Performance had a little more of that gut-wrenching acceleration that this Electrified GV70 doesn't have. Similarly, in the corners, this vehicle really does lean, and it has a crossover SUV feel when you turn, of the body tilting, just because the suspension and the architecture wasn't set up for the amount of weight that this car is. Putting the Electrified GV70 in sport mode does definitely help. I also like how they automatically inflate the side bolsters of the seats when you put the car in boost mode or sport mode, because they know you're gonna be chucking this thing around corners a little more readily. So it is better in sport mode. However, it does not match the level of sportiness and athleticism in the GV60 Performance. It is so very quiet in here, both great passive and active noise cancellation of the outside world. So it's a very hushed cabin. You could easily have a whisper conversation with someone. It is really nice and quiet in here. The suspension is also really smooth. If I go back to comfort mode, my side bolsters deflate in order to give me a little more space. The throttle mapping also changes when you go into sport or boost mode and keep your foot in the same position. The car will accelerate slightly. All electric Genesises have this, and Hyundai products. I've noticed the car will accelerate slightly because the throttle mapping is different, and then when you go back to comfort, it will decelerate slightly. It's an odd feeling, but you get used to it. And in comfort mode, this car just soaks up the road and wafts down. It's a truly luxurious experience, which I'm really impressed that a compact luxury crossover like this can drive so smoothly, which it definitely should, given the fact that this car costs $75,000, which is a lot for a compact luxury crossover. I think partially because Genesis also sells an electric-only compact crossover, there are no EV badges on the outside of this Electrified GV70. All it says is GV70 around back, just like the gas versions. And that means it's really the absence of exhaust tips and this smooth front grille that alert anyone to this car's EV nature. And that's really impressive because this Electrified GV70 has the same specs as the GV60 Performance. 2 electric motors, 238 miles of range, 483 horsepower, and 0 to 60 in just 3.8 seconds. Packaging is normally one of the biggest issues when converting a gas car into an electric car, and you do feel that somewhat in the Electrified GV70. Getting into the back seat, I do have enough room at 6'2", enough knee room, enough foot room, but my knees are a little higher than I'd like because the batteries had to go somewhere and they went underneath the floor, but I still do have enough headroom. The seats are very comfortable. I have a panoramic sunroof, heated seats, and a manual peasant blocker. That's very important. The GV70 is a more attractive vehicle in my opinion than the GV60. It's more classically handsome, and I really like the idea of driving around in a vehicle that no one knows is electric and no one knows can go from 0 to 60 in 3.8 seconds. And back to the luxury nature of the Electrified GV70, the cabin is so luxurious. I love this light white interior. Now this car only has 1,600 miles on it, so I can't speak to how it stands the test of time, but right now it looks pristine and so luxurious. I love how they matched the white buttons on the steering wheel to the white steering wheel itself. You have a 3D instrument cluster, which doesn't come across on camera, unfortunately, but looks great in person. I love how the screen of the GV70 is up high and in your line of sight. It's very easy to control. You can use a touchscreen, or there's a swivel wheel, which is my favorite way to control infotainment systems while driving. It's just safe and you get a really nice tactile feel. And overall, this cabin is definitely more luxurious than you get in the GV60. That interior is really just a rebadged and reupholstered interior from a Hyundai Ioniq 5 and Kia EV6, because that's the platform that the Genesis GV60 uses. And this is the interior that you get in the GV70 gas versions, and it's very similar to the interior from the G80 sedan, which is a very nice luxury midsize sedan. So that's the Genesis Electrified GV70. It takes the great looks and the luxurious interior of the regular GV70 and adds the stellar athleticism, at least in a straight line, of the GV60 Performance. I really like this car, and I do think I would choose it over the GV60 Performance. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.